Here we are at the End the Fed rally, November 22nd, 2009.
They know.
Dun dun dun.
Images are going to get out, but they try to damage control. So they, that's like I said, they put everybody on the grass. So when they took that picture from the steps, it looked like
Scotty Bowman.
Hey, how's it going?
Mr. Senator, how you doing?
All right. Look at your bumper sticker on my car.
that's crazy. They never focus on, they always pick us for yours. And then,
worried about we live amongst our enemies. They're your neighbors. If you're worried whether there was a secure shot, if you're securing
John Coon? Yeah, and Renee, and they're still married. So I haven't talked to him in like a couple of years. He basically is very reclusive, living out in the country.
Documentary on
We could actually despite all 1.5 quadrillion derivatives set up based on the American Constitution, independent credit systems where only nations based on by an act of the President of the Congress can issue credit on behalf of long-term projects. Science driver projects, internal improvement. And based on that, you make available on a local level through a commercial management system the credit for the contractors for those infrastructure projects. And that's how you jumpstart an economy. You can do that really quite quickly. Right. And so, and if you cooperate, Larouche is scientific. Right. But look at the United States. We've screwed ourselves on Germany.
So I'm just saying
But we should get that all right. Russia's willing to willing to say, we're not in a position, industrially to do this. I'm Debbie. I'll call you.
Thank you.
So who's David Larouche? Is that his name?
Lyndon.
Lyndon, I'm sorry.
You don't know Lyndon?
I've heard of him. Well, I got the information, but I just...
Where have you been?
I guess I don't know, but
well, Lyndon, he ran for president.
I got one of those. I got like package over there, but it's like I have nowhere to put it.
Leave your name so I can stay in touch with you, but I'll answer your question no matter what. Larouche is the guy who ran for president as a Democrat and worked as an independent for since I joined this fight, which is the first time he ran for president was against Jimmy Carter.
Oh, wow.
And our advertisement for it was Carter with a nuclear power cloud coming out of his head, because he was being used by Brzezinski.
Right, and I realized
he was being run by the Brzezinski crowd, the Trilateral Commission, way back then.
Right.
And these guys were going for a showdown, right? And for a showdown kind of policy, the typical showdown policy. So Larouche ran. He is famous because he's an economic forecaster. He started in the 50s. He forecast the collapse of the Bretton Woods system, which didn't take place until under Nixon.
That's
right. A lot of us who are close to 60 were recruited on campuses throughout this country because Larouche was the only one right, which is that you could have a breakdown crisis. That would be the things you used to study in your sociology classes. Would the legislation put into effect prevent another depression, right? And Larouche, Larouche basically was right that what was already happening after the death of Franklin Roosevelt under Truman and moving into the 60s was, into the 50s would create, he forecast a recession because of what was being done in the auto sector, which I could go into, but it's really no different than what you're seen now, what you've seen with
It's been going on for a long time.
with the bubbles, what they did is instead of actually improving manufacturing or the quality of the car, they would have bigger fins and paint it pink, you know, and they would create a bubble, and by giving loose credit to buy cars and to turn it over every 2 years, but nothing really, it wasn't, but the car would, by the time the car you had, and they would give you, just like with the housing, you wouldn't have to pay, and then you pay a balloon payment. By that time, the car should actually, you know, was actually at the point of breaking down. So why would you do it? But it was all just based on just this Ponzi scheme of creating bubbles, right? So he was forecasting that all along. We're now in what he says is a breakdown crisis. It's a civilizational crisis. It's a breakdown of the system of empire, of globalization and free trade, which has always been the method of empire, usury, and where you always create a middleman that controls through, you know, through through controlling the oceans, the maritime. Most empires have been maritime, right? So that was the British Empire. We're still living under a British.
When you go to court, I realize that, right?
Imperial system, but largely
flags and surrounded in gold.
Right, but the thing really was that they would have, countries weren't allowed to produce most of what they needed, and we were a protectionist system. What was called the American system was a protectionist system where you would have tariffs to protect your internal production,
right,
and your employment and what your life required. And if you destroy that and let someone dump cheap goods on your market, undermine your manufacturing, and then you're dependent on a foreign power even to eat, then you know, obviously you can be slaughtered.
So this guy was like predicting all that?
At every point.
When did he run? When did he run last?
He's 87, so he ran last in 2004 was the last time Larouche ran. He didn't run this past year because he said, I can't serve 2 terms. And he was the brains behind Reagan's, he's the idea man. He's the brains, right? He's what you would call a policymaker, a statesman or thinker in the most profound scientific way. He's not looking at money. He's looking at human creativity and unleashing what it means to be human on this planet to make the breakthroughs that mankind requires, because the history of mankind is always being able to make a hotter fire that you can concentrate on a smaller area. You know, human civilization as opposed to, you know, great apes or something, because it's a fireplace, right? So you've got to always overcome apparent strategic raw material shortages through growth. I mean, the more successful you are in any mode of production, you're going to say use up, whether it's, you know, unless you make a discovery, like how to take that greasy kid stuff, that oil in the ground that's ruining your farmland, and combust it, right? So you're constantly forced to create what he calls higher energy flux density. So that's like nuclear. Fission is higher than, you know, any kind of burning of carbons and things like this, right?
Well, I don't know.
And you can, in other words, you can get more bang. You can retrieve strategic raw materials, which were constant. I mean, he always goes through this kind of rich discussion of how the universe works. You know, because
obviously the system that we're using now isn't very efficient, and for that reason we use it so they can keep selling to us, obviously.
In other words, we need people to be scientists.
You think this guy's like maybe too old though? 87?
No, he's built a youth movement, and he's.
So he's not going to actually run then, or who's going to run?
Yeah, but you're going to.
Is he going to run?
We have to. What has to be done in the next couple of weeks and months, because we're at the point of a total systemic breakdown, of a chain reaction collapse. It's already happening. We have hundreds of banks. They're all bankrupt. Every state and city is bankrupt. Countries. The production on this planet is adequate for around 2 billion people. We have 6.7 billion people. You know, and you have some stuff in reserves, you know, you have some capabilities, but you're basically looking at mass death, right? From the spread of disease and collapse and breakdown of sanitation systems.
Actually got us to this point then.
What?
We need to actually reverse what's gotten us to this point.
So what Larouche is saying, that's what the Larouche plan is. Yes.
We have to like end NAFTA and GATT and start having...
it's much more. It's actually end the British Empire. End globalization, free trade, and the British Empire by having a group of core nations, Russia, China, India, and the U.S., who have the population, industrial power, military power, absolutely everything, to just shut down this Afghanistan war war, cooperate and put in place a fixed exchange rate system among sovereign nations where we peg our currencies to each other, and we sign treaty agreements for long-term projects. And we put everyone back to work building rail, water, and energy.
Yeah, they're pegging the currencies, though. That sounds a little... Because that's actually one of the things that they want, don't they? Like a basket of currencies, everything be pegged to like a global...
We're not talking about that. That's the enemy operation.
Right.
It's actually to create what FDR was committed to in the post-war period. The reason for a fixed exchange rate, where you fix, it's not market basket of regional currencies, because the real measure has to be, as I said, human creativity, productive economy, but the reason you peg currencies to each other, or a few key currencies within a narrow band, the reason you do that is, say I want to sell to Mexico a steel plant so that they can actually build their own railroads and employ their people productively on a higher level and advance, and improve the standard of living and build their nation, right? If you have a fixed exchange, what happens when you allow a floating exchange rate is that, okay, so you go ahead, you proceed with that, and you say you can pay us back 1 to 2% interest, very low interest. We want you to succeed. We know you're going to become, we're going to be trading, we're going to be doing all sorts of things. If someone devalues is able to gamble and devalue the Mexican peso, so all of a sudden overnight, instead of a 1-to-1 parity, it's 1 to 5, and they have to pay in dollars, and all of a sudden they're paying 5 times more, right?
Inflation for some reason.
Right, yeah, because their currency was devalued by speculators who are buying and selling this to screw them, right? They devalue like the IMF. This is what the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, works hand in glove with with George Soros and the London crowd, who
definitely have a conflict of interest there.
Right, they speculate, right,
they pay themselves money and buy it up and sell it and short it.
Well, what they do is they devalue your currency and they say, now you can't pay your debts.
Right.
Well, we'll loan you more money, but give us
the roads, give us the water plants, give us everything.
Right. Yeah, stop spending so much on healthcare, stop spending so much on agriculture.
Here, take this shot. We got some shots for you.
Right.
Here, get on this FEMA camp. There's some nice men there.
So did you leave your name?
No, but I will.
Yeah, I'll give you a DVD.
I got a package, so I just want to work the camera.
Right. Oh yeah, you're doing the photography.
Well,
that's
for
great.
I can turn this off.